Welcome to Indiana Sports Beat Radio, presented by Andy Moore-Honda of Bloomington.
Know your role and shut your mouth, you jabroni!
Fires upfield into the end zone. It is caught. Jelani Woods, touchdown! ISB!
43-point night for Tyrese Halliburton.
How do you like that, partner?
Galloway drives all the way to the hole, throws it up, got it! Indiana's got their first lead of this contest.
It's pretty simple. I win. Google me.
Now, from the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios, here's your host, Jim Coyle.
Hello, everybody. Welcome aboard another edition of Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Cannot thank you enough for being along with us for the ride on this Thursday, January 18th. No heat wave here, baby. It is still cold, cold, as the temperatures dipped down overnight. But that's okay. That's what winters are like. It'll get better. Lots to get to. The Pacers making news. Big time trade. Good day to have Kristen Airy on. They bolster their lineup. They're serious about being a playoff, not a playoff contender, but a playoff more than just a contender, especially after the year they've had. They've had some great wins against teams like Milwaukee. But Pascal Siakam looks to be joining the fold. They give up a couple of first rounders, a second round. Was it Bruce Brown? I'm trying to remember who else left, but overall, it's an all-star trade. This he's averaging 22 points a game. We'll talk a little bit. Tyler Smith is with us today. We'll talk IU basketball with him, but a little bit of Pacers from a different standpoint than we will when we talk to Kristen Airy. Chris will probably be under, like Matt Taylor, a lot of times under, since it's not quote unquote official, they can't really comment on it. So, but I've already planned it out with Chris. I'm going to say, if for instance something were to happen, yada yada. Sad news in the NBA. Warriors assistant coach Dejan Milojevic passed away after having a heart attack at a private team dinner the other night. Warriors coach who dealt primarily with the forwards and the centers, so I'm assuming he had a lot of contact with Trace Jackson Davis. But sad news either way. 46 years old, and he passes away. So some sad news for the Warriors. Amazon invests more in the sports world, and it hits a little close to home as they invest in Diamond Sports, who owns 18 networks under the Bally Sports Network. That name sounds familiar to you because they carry the Pacers game. We'll talk to Chris about that. Kristen Airy on the program today. So very fortuitous. I also want to talk about all of you people who think that this third year dip is expected and okay. It's not. I mean, you're the only one that thinks that, and I don't get it. I'm going to look at St. John's. You know what St. John's has done? Nothing but win. They brought in 10 transfers. First-year coach Rick Pitino. How about Ole Miss? Chris Beard. Do you know what they are? They're 15-1, 2-1 in the SEC right now. Last year, they finished their season 13-21. So that third-year dip stuff, it's not flying. Not flying. Indiana is their next game coming up Friday night on the road, of course. as they travel to Wisconsin. It's like going to hell for Indiana basketball right now, a place they haven't won since 1895. No, just kidding. I think it's 1998 is the actual date, which still is shocking. Was it the last time they were up there, they had a 20-point lead and could not hold it? Not surprising, but men's college basketball scoreboard from last night. North Carolina, number 4, North Carolina, easily took care of Louisville 86-70. Kentucky in the SEC at home with an easy win over Mississippi State 90-77. UConn, number 1 UConn, handles Creighton, number 18 Creighton 62-48. Number 5 Houston, they crushed number 25 Texas Tech 77-54. Number 12 Arizona in action, and they have no problem with USC 82-67, my fault. Number 13 Alabama 80-65. Number 13 Auburn 80-65 over Vanderbilt. So the ranked teams are rolling there. And the team that I just talked about, well, Oklahoma, number 15 Oklahoma, they beat West Virginia 77-63. The only ranked team to lose, that team I just talked about, Ole Miss. They take their second loss of the season, but it's on the road at LSU, 89-80, so it's not like they ran out of the building. Ole Miss still 15-2 now, 2-2 in the SEC. LSU with 11-6 overall, 3-1 in the SEC. That was your top 25. In the Big Ten, Nebraska was on the road at Rutgers. And guess what? Rutgers holds on for that win, 87-82. That game was tied at the half. It was tied after regulation and goes to overtime where Rutgers is able to pull that game out. So Nebraska now 3-4 in the Big Ten, 13-5 overall. Rutgers gets their second Big Ten win of the season, 10-7 overall. And a game that I watched, Maryland at Northwestern. Maryland loses this game, but let me tell you, they were right there. This was a game that went down to the end, 72-69, the final score. Maryland is a team that has not done well on the road, but yet they just won their last game at Illinois, upsetting them, and damn near upset Northwestern, which is now 4-2 in the Big Ten. So Maryland is a team that is on the rise. But that's your college basketball news. I've seen some Alabama players hitting the portal. All kinds of, but that's to be expected. Calipari reached his 400th win with Kentucky. Bronny in that USC game, Kevin Durant was watching from the front row. Bronny James got hot early and hit his first 3 shots, but USC loses that game, like I said, 82-67 to number 12 Arizona. But it's good to see him back after what he went through with that scare. I mean, that was extraordinary. I cannot imagine as a parent that would have just, I don't know what I would have done. But to see him to be able to endure that and to come back and play at this level, pretty wild. Pretty wild. But big news, like I said, for the Pacers as the trade deadline approaches. It's big news in Indianapolis with the Pacers acquiring all-star forward Pascal Siakam in a trade that will send Bruce Brown and Jordan Nora and 3 first-round picks to Toronto. That's a lot. Both Bruce Brown and Jordan Nora actively playing for the Pacers had been, and 3 first-round picks. 2 of those are this year. And Siakam playing his final season of a 4-year, $137 million deal. So he's going to be an unrestricted free agent this summer. There's a lot of danger in what the Pacers did because there's no guarantee they can re-sign him. But they have given up what they have to get him. But they're confident that they can re-sign him and that he'll want to be in Indianapolis, playing with the likes of Tyrese Halliburton. Again, we'll talk about that more with Tyler Smith when he joined us, and Chris Denaria, of course, as to what label or level that he can talk to us. We'll find out. In college football, like I said, there's always people in and out. The ACC accuses Florida State of breach of contract and seeks damages. This is getting ugly. How do you continue a relationship in a conference where you have a team that is suing you and now you're suing back? It's just ugly. And it's just, it's like a family member suing a family member. How do you put that broken plate back together? It's going to be something. So we'll see. You know, Indiana has or had, I'm going to have to look at the roster to see if Declan McClain is still on the Indiana football roster, but Gage Goldberg, the son of former WWE star wrestler Bill Goldberg, committed to play football at Colorado. His son is the 6', 215-pound linebacker from Bern, Texas. Initially committed to Alabama as a preferred walk-on, which I would imagine a preferred walk-on at Alabama is like getting a scholarship at a lot of other places. Once Nick Saban announced his retirement, however, Goldberg flipped his commitment to Colorado and head coach Deion Sanders. He'll walk on. He's just a walk-on. Never before have I seen a walk-on get attention like this. He's a walk-on. So the family already had a connection to Sanders. Bill Goldberg played college football at Georgia. Did not know that. And then in the NFL with Sanders at the Atlanta Falcons. The elder Goldberg played defensive tackle in a 6-year career before joining professional wrestling. So there you go. Kind of wild. After Arizona's coach Fish left there to go to Washington, 9 Arizona players entered the transfer portal. That whiplash effect, of course. Running back Jonah Coleman, that's going to leave Arizona in a precarious situation. Good, coming off of a great year. Lose their coach, now they're losing players. That's the thing about college athletics. These teams that rise up, not your Colorado, not your Arizona, not your Alabamas and Penn States and Michigans. Those teams are never going to really be, might take some hits, but they're not going to be really, really hurt. Teams like Arizona, this stuff really hurts. That's hard to read. That's a rebuild almost when you come back into that. Star Alabama safety Caleb Downs enters the transfer portal. So I don't know if Kalen DeBoer can get him to come back. But even Alabama you can see that even Alabama suffers the same deal once you have a coaching change, which is weird because it's not like Alabama's bringing in some unknown. But obviously these guys wanted to play for Nick Saban. And that's that. And I get it. We've got a great schedule lined up. Of course, Shannon Griffith up with us next. We'll talk some football. Tyler Smith joins us later. Chris Denary as well. Back with more Indiana Sports Beat Radio on this Thursday, right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
In the market.
All right.
Rudy. There you go. It's right. Rudy. Yes, they did. Yeah, it wasn't terrible. Brian, you're right. Not sure what he's waiting for. I'm not sure if it's necessarily that or waiting to necessarily see what happens with this Indiana season, as it has been not exactly good.
Sending a message to Shannon just in case he needs a reminder.
Rudy. What the hell?
Here's Mr. Shannon. Good morning, sir.
For some reason, I thought it was 9:10. Did I mess that up?
It can be 9:10 in the future if you want it to be.
Yeah, just when you say, I don't know if you can send that when you send that link. Just I'm dumb in this regard. So
no problem.
Whatever you want me, I'm good. Whether it's 8:50 or 9:10, it's up to you guys.
Okay, sounds good. All right, we got 10 seconds. Here we go.
In Chop Shop Steakhouse, Chop Shop Market and Table, a part of the Wild Food Group, is your butcher, baker, and fish house, no matter where you live.
This segment is brought to you by the Chop Shop, home of the Indiana football and men's basketball coaches shows. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Hey, welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio here on this Thursday, and welcome aboard our good friend Shannon Griffith. How are you, sir?
I am doing great, and it's snowing up here in the Great North, and I'm ready for it to stop and become 70.
That's over John's head. He doesn't get that. I give references constantly that John does not get. Not getting on him. He's just he's just young enough that none of that he doesn't know what that means. And John, I promise you, he's as dumb as that sounds. Thousands of people know exactly what I just did right there.
It sounded like you were trying to do like a rooster crow or something like that.
No. There was a comedy routine. I can't remember who it was by, but it was a couple of guys that are well known. But what wasn't the name of it? The Great White North or something like that?
Yeah, I think that was the actual name, Great White North. It's a show, yeah.
But yeah, it is certainly a chilly one around as this cold snap has hit everybody.
Yeah.
But the college football world is churning, continuing to churn. I was just talking about Goldberg's son. He was committed to Alabama as a walk-on. I've never seen anybody talk about a walk-on. Now he's going to be a walk-on at Colorado. Okay, great. He's a freaking walk-on. Who cares? His dad was Goldberg. That's why. But
Dad's got the money to pay for that scholarship. So.
Exactly. See how he knows. I love it. In the college football world, there's Alabama. You got a lot of guys, not a lot, some guys hitting the portal. So even with a program as stout as Alabama, when you have a coaching change, you're going to have changes. Changes.
Yeah. Surprising at that too. But sometimes a new head coach may not meet the, personalities of the guys that are there, and they're looking for something better. And sometimes the portal's good for you, because it gets kids out of the way that don't want to be there per se, or don't necessarily want to buy into what you're trying to accomplish. But I can't imagine Coach DeBoer changing much at Alabama other than philosophically offense, maybe.
Yeah, now all they do, Caleb Downs, a second-team All-American in his freshman season, has entered the portal. That's a loss. But they're going to gain. They're going to lose. They're going to gain. So I think that's going to be the same.
Yeah, and I think there'll probably be some kids from Washington that will jump in the portal, since they did not move up Grubb, the OC, to the head coaching position, which that was not exactly well received by Grubb, I don't think. No, and I don't know if he was led to believe, if there was a change, that the general rule of thumb, if you have success, you promote from within. And I think that sometimes that gets a little bit overplayed. But if I remember, serves me correct, I'm not sure that's the same AD that hired Kellen there at Washington. Maybe
not. Their AD is at USC now.
Yeah. And so you get a new person in there, and he looks at it and, I didn't hire this staff. I kind of inherited this staff. And so he went, hired, Jed Fish from Arizona. I don't know about that hire. I mean, he's done well at Arizona. I can understand the move that thinks that he's moving to a top tier program, but they're moving to the Big Ten, and they may not be a top tier program. I mean, as Michigan proved. So, there's always that interesting hire move, feeling of overlooked. I think that's the way I would say it for Grubb's release on the social media sites and things of that nature, but it just wasn't meant to be. And the hard part that I hate about this stuff, and it's never easy, is you got a place like Alabama where, they've had tremendous amount of success, and you get a new coach. So those guys are probably all out of a job now. And then you got the guys at Washington, but he's not taking everybody from Washington. So theoretically, here's the guys that go to the national championship as coaches, and all of a sudden an assistant coach that was a part of that staff is no longer employed.
No, but ironically, there are going to be. I sent out a tweet that was slightly wrong. That's had six former IU staffers when it's actually 5 because Dr. Rhea has left to go to LSU. Dr. Rhea and David Ballou were like hand in glove for a long time, and but LSU was able to get Rhea away. God, can you imagine the money that he's making because he's left? He was at Indiana, got pulled away to Alabama with a big old fat contract, I think of like $400,000, and then for LSU to pull him away, it has to be probably up towards $500,000
at least. And strength coaches are, they are an important aspect of your program.
And he's not even a strength coach, though, if I'm correct. Yeah. He's more he's the wizard behind the computer.
Yeah, he has all the
technical data.
The algorithms. Is that correct? Am I in this computer world? I got to make sure I got the vernacular right.
Yes, you must run X number of sprints at this speed, at this angle, and all of that stuff, that geometry. And
they track a kid. Nowadays they track a kid from Monday through Saturday to give the determination of whether or not they need to pull back on his workout on Sunday or Monday because of what is he expensed in through that week. So there's a lot of technical aspect to today's game in terms of strength and conditioning. And those guys are pretty darn good. I mean, that hurt Indiana when those guys jumped to Alabama, and you can't fault them because they got, major program under Nick Saban, but now they've all been kind of reunited in some respects. And it'll be interesting to see who all gets to go to Alabama with Kellen. And I know most of the offensive staff has been announced as going, but I'm not quite sure where it leaves the defensive side of the ball. So,
you've got, of course, Kane Womack that brought up from South Alabama. Ironically, who was the DC at Indiana when Kalen DeBoer was the OC at Indiana. First of all, the irony of five, not at different times, but 5 guys that were on the Indiana staff in 2019 are now in the highest positions at Alabama. It's mind-boggling.
It is. And see, even some for the Alabama fans that are, kind of like, wait a minute here. These guys are all from Indiana.
But here's the thing, and I keep saying this, and I say it all the time. Everything in life, I don't care if you're running a restaurant or a business, whatever, or a basketball team or a football team.
Right.
You have to have the right people in the right positions.
Right.
While all these coaches are going there, not all of them are in the same position, specifically Kalen DeBoer.
Yeah.
Because you also have Tom Allen, who's the DC at Penn State. Not exactly I'm not sure if that's a step down, to be honest with you.
Right.
So Indiana did not have the right people in the right positions in 2019, and that's all that there is to that.
Yeah. Yeah. And from there, it kind of deteriorated. It's like you said, just because of transition, people leaving, having to hire one guy, and that guy having to come in and fit with the other 8-9 guys that are on the field. And there's a lot of dynamics that go into that. And it's about, Bill Mallory always said, it's about the people around you, hiring good people around you. And, sometimes that gets lost because somebody is known for X, Y, and Z, and you get wrapped up into thinking, oh, well, he knows of this, and then you hire him and find out he don't know nothing. And and it was all
nothing. I love that.
Yeah, out on the street talk, and he comes in and he's not a great fit for your staff. And things of that nature. But Kalen did give him all the credit in the world. He's moved up quite quickly for him, and just like you said, he's going to make
for anybody. 10 years ago, he was at NAIA South Dakota Falls or whatever the hell it was.
Falls. He was at Sioux Falls.
10 years later, he's at the pinnacle,
the
absolute pinnacle.
He's living in that world that he's probably questioning, is this really happening? I'm getting $1 gazillion.
To steal the line from all the ladies out there, he's living his best life.
Absolutely living his best life. And hey, some of these Indiana coaches are living their best life right now after the salaries were released, and you looked at the salaries these guys were making at JMU, which was about what you would expect from that mid-major level. And now they come to Indiana, and some of these guys are making good money. And kudos to Indiana for increasing that salary pool. And
get me started on that.
Why not? You don't like the salary pool?
Because no, it's not that. It's because last night I was answering. I always try to answer everybody's questions that comment, and it had more to do with basketball. And everybody said, "Oh, Woodson's got to go." Yada yada. I'm like going, that ain't happening. First of all, I said he's got 3 years left on a contract. That's going to cost you $12.6 million. You add that $12.6 million to the $15 million that they just paid Tom Allen, that was reduced down from $20 million. Then you add that to the $10 million that they paid Archie Miller to leave not to coach. And you add that to the $4 million they gave Tom Crean not to coach. That comes up to a big fat number of over $40 million in what's called dead money.
Yeah.
So that's
I
what
get
I was alluding
you. Yeah,
to.
right. No, I get you on that one. But, it
is paying $1 million more than it paid Tom Allen's staff.
Yeah, and that always happens. It always happens that way. You get one shot at it, so you ask for you ask for everything and negotiate what you can. And Cignetti was able to get additional money for the salary pool, and he's paying these guys pretty well. The coordinators, I think Shanahan's making $8K and Bryant's making over $1 million. And there's a good story. It's the same like Kellen DeBoer, 2009. He was Brian Haynes was probably making $15,000 for me.
These guys have won the lottery. These guys have won the lottery
at Manchester. Now he's making $1.1 million at Indiana. So I'm maybe call him and say, hey, you need a little percentage of that money there, Bryant. But that's college football today. Guys making big money. I did my podcast the other night when I went to Ball State Division I back in 1995. I was making $24,000 as an assistant coach, quarterbacks, but I also got a free car. So on top of that, that was the deal. But when I left there after we got fired in 2002, I topped out at $37,000. That was back in 2002. So you transition now, those guys are making 95, 100,000, 150,000, even some of those mid majors. And that's just the way the salaries have gone. And it's good for those coaches if they plan right, because what could happen? Your coach wins, he moves on, and next thing you know, you think you're going with him and you're not. And that's
and these assistant coaches' contracts, they're not the same length as the head coach.
Minimum
these are 2-year deals.
Most of them are 2. There are some that are 3. I don't know I think Indiana's were all 2-year deals.
Now, and that includes the former assistants who are being paid through next season, I believe.
Yeah, and it all depends. I think some of them get paid through the end of June, depending on where they were at on their contract. Sometimes the contracts come out and it looks like they've got a 2-year deal. In the actuality, it's 1.5 years because of the way the fiscal calendar falls and things of that nature. But, nowadays they get 2-year deals or 3-year deals. When I was coaching, I got 1-year deal, February to February. So if you had a bad season and the coach was going to make changes, you're done in November, you run out of pay in February. So it's not always, I mean, some of these guys run up against the bad timing on the dates and such. So that's the hard part, is seeing some guys go out of a job that just played in a national championship game as a coach. So,
well, to give you an understanding of how the football salaries have risen at Indiana, because of that bump that they had in 19 and 20, which, that a bump is there and it's gone, but the salaries go up and don't come back.
Mm-hmm.
I do not remember what the coordinators were making back in 8 years ago, but I know that Tom Allen's first salary was $1.8 million as the head coach.
Right.
Indiana now has its first $1 million coordinator as defensive coordinator, Bryant Haynes, who was a Broyles Award semifinalist last season. He's going to earn just over $1 million a year. And the offensive coordinator, which I was a little surprised at, I thought that he would be the $1 million guy, Mike Shanahan. He's going to be at $800,000, which ain't exactly chopped liver.
No. I can live on 800,000.
But they did not have. That is just so much higher than what they were paying just a few years ago.
Yeah. And when you look at those salaries, the one thing that you have to look at too, they have what they call a base pay, and that's usually what the university is paying, and that's what all their benefits are figured off of. And then they have a media type of package, or anything else that they supplement that salary with. So they're that's
supplement is not probably the right word, because it's higher than the base.
Yeah, it's higher than the base, and those deals are pretty sweet in some cases.
For example, speaking of Brian Haynes, his base salary is $400,000.
Right.
That's pretty good right there. But his supplement, as you want to call it, is an additional $550,000.
Yeah. And the one thing I don't know on the supplements, so like when you have let's say a guy gets fired, like they have the transition right now, I'm not sure the supplement is concluded in the overall payout to the coaches, because that's in addition to their base salary. So I don't necessarily think that is a part of any buyout scenario. Now, I may be wrong. I'm thinking in that regard, but you would think that it's just the base salary that they're on the hook for, and not, anything above that and those supplementals and packages that coaches get nowadays. But hey, Sigdig is done great, and they got that Elijah, or is it Surratt? Is that his name? That wide receiver that they got from JMU, kind of a late portal guy. That kid's a player, and he can take the top off of defense. He's got the speed, the size, he's got the full package. And again, that wide receiver room is going to be really, really competitive to find out who's going to be your top 8. And there's going to be some good football players that are not going to figure in it because, of the competition there. So that it's going to be a great spring, and we'll find out a lot about them as they progress through it right now.
Yeah. And spring practice, not that far away, even though it's the frozen tundra outside right now with snow on the ground and temperatures not even approaching 32 degrees. It's hard to say, but spring ball not that far off.
No, usually they've done it there probably is it the end of March, right after the spring break? That's usually when they started, or they started like a week before and go into spring break, and that week's off, and then come back and fulfill the rest of their calendar dates for spring ball. I have not seen an official release on that, but you're right. It's coming up right around the corner. I mean, these guys right now are in winter conditioning. They're finding out a lot about those kids that they've brought in, as well as the guys that are there. So it's the competition's on right now, and it will continue through the end of spring. So there's a lot going on. You got a staff that's trying to get their feet on the ground. They're recruiting 25 kids now as they start rolling out some offers on those kids and re-offering the kids that may have had an offer under Tom Allen. And they're also trying to get themselves ready for spring football in terms of schemes and stuff. So there's no time off per se for the staff. They're in it right now, and it's almost like being in a season type of mentality where each and every week you're kind of working a game plan for each and every week, and that's the way it is pretty much for the entire staff. Is it's 100% full go right now.
And speaking of which, this whole thing, this has to work out for Indiana, and no matter what, it has to work because, not to throw this on to Scott Dolson, but basketball is not exactly lighting the world on fire right now. And that hire has been questioned. And then this is a risk, a big risk. And I'm not saying that's not going to work, but I'm just saying it has to work. Indiana has to be successful. What is going to define successful here?
Well, I think for the short term, anyway, looking at it, I think you want to have a consistent opportunity of getting to a bowl game. That is monumental in the standpoint from the development. You get like an extra month of practice with your players, and that helps in the development phase of the equation because not everybody's going to a bowl game. So you get that extra practice, not with just the top guys. Now, you're talking about guys that may not have been a starter and those that have been down in the depth chart. Those days are like gold. And nowadays, with guys opting out of bowl games, all of a sudden the number 2 guy finds himself being the starter. So for now, it's getting to that bowl game scenario on a consistent basis, and then elevating those goals moving forward, where you get to the point where you're getting to the top tier bowls, those January bowls type of deal. So in my mind, that's kind of the success that Indiana needs and looks for. I know Coach Signetti would not accept that as an answer, because in his mind, he's looking to be at the top of the heap, and not just getting to a bowl is not his objective, but looking at it from, 30,000 feet, I guess I could say that would probably be my guesstimation, I guess you could call it, of what is successful at this point in time for Indiana.
We've got to take a break. Shannon Griffith is with us. We'll come back, talk a little more football. Jim Irsay obviously going through some issues with the Colts. So talk about that and a little more here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Back right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
If you're looking for a home, how about that? The stat.
What's that?
Signetti said in an interview he hired Indiana's current coordinator, D coordinator, for $6,000. Now he makes $1 million.
Yeah, that was probably when he was at Indiana, PA.
Yeah.
And he was hiring him as one of those coaches that you get some money for, and they come and they, live off of nothing. He probably made more with me than he did Signetti at Indiana, but his brother at that time, who's now a head coach down there in Carolina somewhere, I think it's at Challen, but his brother was the offensive coordinator at Indiana, PA, when Bryant came on board there, with his brother being on the staff. So he got paid $6,000, but he probably had free room and board.
It's funny. College athletics is like the only thing where virtually everybody knows what you make.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny because nowhere else in life, but even including the players and NIL.
Yeah.
Let me tell you, if people knew what some of these players made via NIL, and I should say this, they would lose their SHIT. I mean, big time.
You talking about Indiana, or are you talking about just in general?
Well, Indiana fans would definitely lose it, but probably a lot of different places. But especially in a place like Indiana, because a lot of six-figure deals out there.
Oh yeah, yeah, and that's the world that,
and it ain't starting with a one either.
Yeah, I know. Well, look at this. Arch Manning, who was coveted at Texas as a backup, had an NIL eval for him was over $3 million, and he hasn't taken a snap. I mean, kids go, if they play it right, they can come out.
Arch Miller's backup,
huh?
Arch Miller's backup.
The guy at Texas.
You mean Arch Manning?
Manning, I'm sorry.
Arch Manning's backup, though?
Little Rhodey.
Yeah, Arch Manning, the freshman, came in as a true freshman last year at Texas.
Right.
$3 million was his.
Oh, well, yeah, but that's because of his last name.
Well,
half of that.
I get that, but at the same time, there's other guys that are, these high school kids that are top-rated recruits are coming
10
in.
seconds, guys. Here we
making,
go.
like you said, six figures.
Go to AndyMoreHonda.com and get more to your door.
This segment is brought to you by Remax Advanced Realty, Indy Home Pros team by Cheryl Sizemore. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coy, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio on this Thursday, brought to you by our good friend Cheryl Sizemore from Remax Realty. If you're in the market for a home in the Indianapolis area, you need Cheryl, and her 2 decades of experience could be the difference between getting the home you want or not. Reach out to her, Cheryl, at IndyHomePros.com. Shannon Griffith joining us from Hoosier Tailgate. We were talking about football or college sports is one of the few places where everybody knows what you make if you're a coach. Salaries are released. Most universities are public, so that stuff is a requirement. The one thing that's not is NIL money. And man, oh man, if kids knew what some of these guys were making, I know the fans would lose their minds.
Right.
Because especially if it's a guy that, well, he's making what? And he's not performing. He's not playing well. Yada, yada. Also, I wonder what would their turmoil within a team be like with guys that are lining up and maybe in the same position, and this dude's making 150 grand and you're getting 25.
Yeah.
Maybe. That would cause some consternation.
Well, yeah. And being that it's so new, it may not be as much as it will be down the line because of what you just said. It's changed the game so much as it pertains to these kids and such. Even the first year kids that are coming into all this, they're probably getting some of the top guys are probably getting some money for their NIL and things of that nature. So it is changed the thing, college football. Right now it's like the wild, wild west. There's very, very little or any guardrails. Ultimately, I think it drove Nick Saban out of the game to a certain extent. Now, he says that wasn't the main focus of it, but some of these guys, I mean, they're just looking at like we do. Like,
but that's kind of funny, I think, because of the not exact accusation that Jimbo Fisher made, but just saying, hey, I was an assistant there. Don't make me. Don't make me.
Well, yeah.
Don't you make me. And so there's no way that stuff wasn't going on at Alabama, just like it did at Auburn, just like it did at all those other places in the SEC. They were the kings of NIL before NIL was a thing.
Yeah, those are the kings of the under the table payments or the envelope stacked with cash that got stuffed into your pocket as you walked by in some type of line at an event. But those days are over now, so everything's legal. But I guess what I was referencing from a head coach's perspective, I mean, what do you know? How do you know how you're going to pay a guy? What are you going to pay a guy? You know, what is someone's value? I mean, now you got to the point now where you got to have guys come in and give you an evaluation on what somebody should or shouldn't get. And you got kids now that are having agents to a certain degree that are helping with this NIL stuff, and especially things outside of the scope of what a college can have their hands into as it pertains to these kids. And it creates a new dynamic that right now, being that it's so new, probably is not as much of a headache as it will be down the road in 5 to 10 years when this thing is, really kicking in. So crazy, but you're right. There'll be people shocked at what some kids are making. And like you said, six figures is for top guys. These kids can come out of college, with some great pocket change if they're smart.
It's exactly why Caitlin Clark is mulling over whether or not to even come back for a senior year as opposed to going first in the WNBA draft. She's a guaranteed first-round draft pick. But you know what? They don't make jack squat. They make nothing in the WNBA. A top player is going to – I don't know that they can make $100,000 a year as a WNBA player. I'm almost positive over 4 years that there's no one who has a contract that equals $400,000 over that time period. She's making more than that, probably well over that in NIL money like right now, but she's not going to lose those endorsements. That's the thing. State Farm, they're going with her. She's the baddest ass player maybe in all of college basketball, men or women's right now. Right. She might be the best shooter in all of college basketball, men or women's right now. She is dynamic. She is kind of stirs it a little bit, but she doesn't go over the line. She's not going to get in trouble.
She has the it factor.
Yes, she's somebody you want to represent you. She's a winner.
Right. There's so many things that describe a person that has the it factor. You just know it when you see it, and they're worth their weight in gold. And like you said, there are kids that are going to get more money by staying somewhere than maybe they would going into a pro endeavor. I go back to the Marvin Harrison situation, not Marv, but his son over at Ohio State. They had a package list somewhere in the neighborhood of $25 million for him to come back for 1 year.
That's just absolutely idiotic.
I mean, it's crazy. Now he opted out and he's going to go to the NFL, but so that figure may be a little bit exaggerated, but any figure, like that is crazy. But it's a part of the game that you have to do it with, and these coaches have to navigate it, and it's just part of it now. But you're right. They're getting paid. They get paid well.
Yeah, we didn't get to talk about Jim Irsay, but you've all seen it by now. I'm sure they rumored to have OD'd earlier in December, but that is not known if it is related to his quote unquote respiratory illness that he's dealing with now, because they were separate situations. But we'll talk about that next time. But Shannon Griffith, cannot thank you enough, brother. As always, make sure you follow him and tune into Hoosier Tailgate.
I appreciate it. You guys have a great rest of your week, and we'll see what happens here coming up spring ball time.
Absolutely. Shannon Griffith joining us here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Much more coming up. Tyler Smith joins us next from thehoosier.com. Back with more right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
In the market for
Morning, Tyler. Welcome in.
Good morning.
Just went to break, so we got about 3 minutes till we come back.
Cool.
Got about 1 minute, Jim. All right, I'm going to go ahead and bring us back in.
Time to build a new home with Property Shore Construction. Now building exclusively south of Bloomington within the Stonecrest Golf community. Choose from one of the gorgeous Stonecrest Signature Series house plans. We have several lots available with scenic views of the golf course. Contact Amy Rhoda with Rebesco Real Estate for additional information. 812-583-0919 or go to mystonecrestliving.com. That's mystonecrestliving.com for more details. This segment is brought to you by Hoosier Hanks East. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio here on this Thursday. Thank you so much for being with us. Appreciate you. Joining us now, Tyler Smith from thehoosier.com. Before we get to Indiana basketball, Pacers make big news last night. Chris Teneri will join us a little later, but not sure how much he can talk about it because it's probably not all official yet, and that usually handcuffs them a little bit. So I'm going to have to do some what if with him. But Pascal Siakam, a great pickup for this team. They have to get rid of some guys who have had some success, Bruce Brown and Jordan Nora. But this is an all-star, another all-star, to go with an all-star that they currently have in Tyrese Halliburton. He's averaging 22 points a game, and this really ups their game, man. And they were already sitting in a decent situation in the playoffs, but this really makes them a contender, a somebody.
Yeah, it was a huge move. You know, how nice is it for the Pacers to be in the news for the in-season tournament? They got those 3 nationally televised games. People started talking about how good Halliburton was and the bright future for the Pacers. And now they sit at 23-17, and they add a 2-time All-Star. He's been an All-NBA player. And the best news, what I keep hearing, is there's a really good chance of extending him this summer. So hopefully it's not just a rental, but I think it's a team that nobody in the East is going to want to face come playoff time.
Yeah, they've struggled over the years, and a lot of people think just because the team is located in Indiana. I guess that's because it's not in Miami, it's not in Los Angeles, it's not in New York. But you know what? Winning's winning, man. And these guys have homes all over the world. So I don't know if they really, why would you care where the team is that you're playing for other than Minnesota?
Yeah. Especially when he gets a chance to play with Halliburton, who apparently has been talking to him the last month or so. Siakam, from everything we've been told, he's very excited to play with him and get a chance to, go deep in the playoffs as he's done before. And, the other thing is money talks. And right now the Pacers are in a position to, I believe, offer him the most money of any team should they want to retain him, which I'm sure they will. So that's been part of it too, is the destination, but also the Pacers in the small market have not always had the cash to pay up for somebody. Because if you pay up for somebody, they're probably going where the most money is, and the Pacers have not always had a chance to do that. But they have that opportunity with both Halliburton after trading for him, giving him a max, and now the same thing for Siakam.
And the Pacers tried. They really wanted to make this a two-man deal. They wanted OG Anunoby as well. And they worked to try to make that happen. But at the end of the day, they were just not able to swing it to get both guys. They did not want to give up, but they would have had to have given up to get that.
Yeah, that would have been wild. But, what would be really fun is if there's a Pacers-Knicks playoff series and those two guys go head-to-head and all the connections. There's definitely a chance that OG ends up staying in New York. He's got connections there. But if things don't go as well, and I saw somebody say that you enjoy playing, 40 minutes a night under Thibodeau, maybe there would still be some pull to come to Indy after that. But I think, whether the money's there for all of them or not, Pacers are in a good spot, having two All-Stars, and they've already got the NBA's best offense historically. So, and good news, Halliburton is supposed to come back soon, much sooner than expected. So great news, great things happening for the Pacers.
On the Indiana basketball side, they are next up in a Friday night tussle on the road at a place that has been like going to hell for them for the last several years. Was it 31 straight?
I don't know if it's that many, but I think 1998 is the last time they won there. So I was 13.
Well, maybe the 31 is how many times Indiana had beaten Wisconsin in a row, I think, prior to this streak starting, which it's mind-boggling. I'll be honest with you. It is utterly mind-boggling for an Indiana program to lose that many times in a row into any place. I don't care where it is.
Yeah.
They don't have that kind of a losing streak at Kentucky, I think. But this is a place they haven't played well. Even with a 20-point lead a year or two ago, they were not able to hold that when we thought that was going to be over. But not only that, Indiana coming off of a loss, in addition to the fact that after this game, they have to go on the road to Illinois, which just lost at home to
Maryland. Yep.
Maryland, who almost beat Northwestern last night on the road. This Maryland team is a team people better watch out for because they haven't played on the road worth a snot. They go to Illinois and win and damn near beat Northwestern last night. That was a great game that came down to the last seconds.
Yeah, they're on the rise for sure. Yeah, it's kind of like Indiana playing so poorly against a rival, and what do they get as a consolation prize? They get to go to Wisconsin. Haven't won there since the 90s. I believe I saw Wisconsin is 23-4 even in the last 27 overall games against Indiana. So Indiana got them last year when Wisconsin had an injury, I believe, but back at Assembly Hall. But man, it's been tough going for this team, and Wisconsin coming off a loss at Penn State is probably not a good thing for Indiana because they're gonna come out for blood, and it's gonna be a tough one. I'll be surprised if Indiana even makes this one a game, but hopefully they can figure some things out quickly.
Well, they have to, because this is becoming problematic for Indiana, and I think it's going deeper than just winning and losing. The psyche of this team, I'm not sure where it is right now, and that starts with Xavier Johnson. He seems to be on a completely different page as to what is needed from him than what he is given. Yet another flagrant foul called on him in a game after having a flagrant foul that basically took him out of the starting lineup. And this is not good for the psyche of this team. And it's hinting at danger yet to come.
Yeah, I don't know what to think anymore with this guy. You know, after the Ohio State game, it looked like the team itself would be a lot more dangerous if this was the version they were getting of him moving forward. Since then, 3 straight, just really poor performances. He looks uncomfortable. He looks at times like a freshman. He's almost 24 years old, I think. And it's a really tough spot, because I know a lot of fans will say, you know, the team is better off with Cupps, and Cupps is part of the future anyway. And I do agree with that second part, especially, but I still think if you want any chance with this year's team to do anything, I still think, unfortunately, Xavier Johnson is, you know, an important piece, and they got to get him going. Or if they feel like it's going nowhere, and I don't know if there's a way to, you know, what they're going to do if it just keeps going downhill. The only bright side is we've seen him go through bad slumps and then pick it up before. But this seems different, as you mentioned, with just the mindset of him and all those injuries and coming back, and then the, you know, ejection, and then the poor performances, 0 points against Purdue. It's just a lot of it's unacceptable. And, you know, I don't have a ton of confidence when that's your captain moving forward.
Yeah, and not only that, you look at the standings. Indiana sitting at the moment in a nice position at 4-3, puts them in 5th. But that's before this 2-game stretch that's coming up, having to go to Wisconsin, having to go to Illinois. Wisconsin sitting at the top at 5-1. What are those teams that they'll play? Purdue is at 5-2. Northwestern 4-2. Illinois, who they will go to, is at 3-2 after suffering that home loss. They're going to be pissed off. They're not going to, and Brad Underwood is going to have them ready. Neither good situations for Indiana to be going into.
Yeah, you start to look at what's ahead, and, you know, you really start to wonder, you know, what's the path for this team? You know, I don't think they can afford a single another home loss at all the rest of the season, the rest of the way. They're going to have to win every home game. They're going to have to find a way to scratch out a road win or two. And, you know, those two things by themselves, when you look at the schedule, is going to be tough. Big Ten, you know, it's every night. Yeah, the home team is favored most nights, but, you know, you get those surprise games in there, and Indiana needs to be the one on the opposite end of that at some point. And there's such little margin for error with this team. So every single decision becomes incredibly important. Sitting guys out with a couple fouls, or subbing a bunch, or Xavier Johnson, his decision-making on the court. There's just so much that goes into it when your team has little margin for error, and they got to pick it up. Even if they, you know, as expected, if they lose these two games coming up, they got to quickly figure it out after that, because they got to protect home court at the very minimum.
Without question. And it is a year where I keep hearing people saying, where you see that, well, we expected a drop off because of what they lost. And I'm like, nope, doesn't work that way. I'm sorry. Because you look down at, look over at St. John's. What is St. John's doing? Rick Pitino went and got 10 new players. 10 different new players.
Yep.
And they are, let's see, last year they were 18-15, and now they're rolling along. You look at Ole Miss. Last year they were 13-21. They hired Chris Beard. Right now they're 15-2, 2-2 in the SEC. But those changes happen for a reason.
Yep.
And these are remarkable changes. They're not a little bit of change. And to me, it's because both of these guys are just great college coaches. They understand the college game and they coach it in that manner.
Yeah, I've written about this as well, especially in today's game with the portal, with NIL, with all that stuff going on. You're going to have most years a lot of roster turnover, and you're going to have to win immediately if you want to remain a good program. So many programs are doing it, obviously for years with the one and dones in other places, but now it's a whole new ball game. And if you can't adapt to that, and maybe there will be some outliers here and there. Maybe this year is the down year. Maybe next year Indiana builds a monster type roster, which is still possible, that kind of makes up for the roster turnover. But you can't have this very often if you want to remain a top program or get back to that. With the roster turnover, you got all summer. You got other teams that are facing the same thing, and you got to find a way to adapt and get going immediately, like so many programs have been doing.
And not only that, Providence, they have wins over Butler, Villanova, and Providence this season. They lost to UConn 69-65. This was after Indiana played them, after Indiana played UConn, to give you an example and an understanding of what has transpired there. So they're going to make the NCAA tournament. That team is. Ole Miss is ranked. Well, they were until they got beat. They'll probably fall back out. But again, you're looking at a team that was 13-21 last year, and then the next season ranked in the top 25. Yeah. There's not a lot more that you have to say there and to understand what's going on.
Yeah, not to mention you hear some of what the coaching staff says about even some recent games, and you're thinking, we're in the meat of the conference schedule now. This is January 18th, so any talk of, I got to get this player doing this or that, or I got to, figure out rotations, or these guys have to figure out how to play in certain situations. Like, that ship has sailed. Maybe you take a few weeks or a month into the season to work out some kinks, but now it's time to win, or you're not going to be dancing in March. So all those excuses have to kind of go away. And, Indiana missed an opportunity to at least give Purdue a game and improve themselves in some of the computers, because that, big of a loss obviously didn't help their cause at all.
No, Indiana has 13 games remaining on their schedule. The next two on the road at Wisconsin and Illinois. Then they'll face an Iowa team that has currently won 3 straight. So it doesn't get easier. Then they get Penn State, but then they have to go to Ohio State, who they did beat at home, but Ohio State is a team that's as good as Indiana.
Yep, there's no easy games. Even the one at Penn State, team that just knocked off Wisconsin. Every single night's going to be a battle and a war. And, unfortunately, Indiana at times this year when they've been punched, they don't punch back. They did against some of the weaker teams, some of the 250, 300, KenPom type teams. They punch back against them. But anytime they're punched in the mouth from a better opponent, they have not really bounced back, which is concerning, because they're going to have to do that to squeak out some of these games that maybe they're not predicted to win.
Forrest pointing out Indiana has not won at Wisconsin in their last 27 visits. And that's just a statistic that is mind-boggling. Also, another stat that I forwarded yesterday, see the guys that was put out. Tom Crean played Purdue 5 times in his first 3 seasons. And remember, those first 3 seasons started with the 08 team that was 6-25. Okay. They played them 5 times. Never did they lose by 21 points. They did not lose by this margin. That was a team that had it could have had me and you on it. Mm-hmm. It was a hodgepodge. It had 11 the first one had 11 underclassmen. And all 3 of those years, none of them had a 5-star player on it, but yet they were able to compete with Purdue while they had Robbie Hummel in that group. So, but what they did have on that Indiana team were shooters. In the second year, they pick up Jordan Hulls, Christian Watford. They had Verdell Jones. But what they had were gritty players who played to win, who had pride, who said, all right, we were 6-25 last year. We're not going to be that this year. They climbed, they grabbed, they scratched, they clawed. There is none of that from this team.
Yeah, I had a fan send me a stat that said, Woodson's lost 29 games in these these years here, but 17 of them have been by double digits. I mean, obviously some of those are tough road games, but there's been a lot of nights where Indiana just kind of quit fighting, and to do it at home against a rival, I expected that at Mackey this year. I expected a pretty lopsided game at Mackey later this season, but I did expect Indiana to give it a battle, cover the spread, and make it a game. And early foul trouble and some decisions, and then they just kind of quit fighting after that, except for that one little stretch to start the second half.
Yeah, I think Indiana fans need to understand that what they have now at their program is just a glorified AAU team for the most part. And that's how most of the players treat it, as an AAU game. We lost. Mm-hmm. We'll have another game. It just doesn't, the meaning is not there. I don't think that's my opinion, but I don't think when I competed in whatever I did, I don't care what it was, winning did not feel nearly as good as losing hurt. And if you're competing and you don't have that feeling, man, that's a difference, because you're playing against guys who do feel that way.
Yep. Hopefully this time around, the coaching staff realizes, obviously they got one stud already coming in next year. Hopefully they're able to keep the right guys and then really, kind of change some philosophies and go in and figure out what they need. Because I still think, a ton can change from now until next year, but there's still that opportunity to fill a roster with some of those dogs and some of those guys who are ready to fight for the university and fight for each other.
Tyler Smith from the Hoosier.com. What do you guys got coming up?
Well, we got Wisconsin, some coverage there, and the story with Todd Leary and the Jump Shot website coming up. And
we'll talk about that for a second.
What's that?
Talk about that for a second.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm talking to him lunch break today, and he's got a website where he's helping people improve their shooting remotely. There's all kinds of some good features, whether it's teams or individuals that want to jump on board. So you'll be able to catch that story at thehoosier.com later this afternoon or early evening. And I encourage everybody to go check it out, even if you're not into shooting hoops. But if you are, especially, it's going to be a good resource for you.
Absolutely. Tyler Smith from India, from the Hoosier.com. Appreciate you, brother.
Have a good one.
Hey, we've got more coming up. Chris Denary from the Pacers should be joining us as well. And we'll talk more Indiana basketball. And we'll talk more about myjumpshot.com. I think Indiana should maybe subscribe to that. Back with more Indiana Sports Beat Radio right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Formerly.
All right, I'll be right back. If you see Chris pop in, just pull him in yourself if you're able to. Okay.
Brian, he didn't even inherit a roster. He inherited two guys that were into the bench guys, I think. I'm just going by memory. I believe he inherited two scholarship players that were end of the bench guys. And that's why the rest of the team was made up of 11 underclassmen. That's virtually unheard of. 11 underclassmen, but they fought. And then his second season, a great recruiting season. That's another thing. You want to talk about what's amazing to me? Tom Crean goes 6-25, but the next year he's able to bring in Jordan Hulls, Derek Elston, Christian Watford, and Mo Creek. In addition to some 3-star named Matt Roth. Tom Crean had his flaws, and we'll talk about this. He didn't know what the hell defense meant. But let me tell you one thing. That dude could spot talent, and it would develop. He has such a long list of guys that he brought in that were not 5 stars that turned out to be superstars. It's crazy. I see this staff recruiting stars, not talent. I don't know that they can recognize and evaluate talent. Anybody can watch a 5-star guy go, oh, he's good, isn't he? Well, no joke. And they put all the resources into that.
All right. I'll send a text to Chris. I know we usually hear from him if he's not going to be here. So
no 5 lefts. They didn't have an Edie, but they had Robbie Hummel, and I'd have to go back and look, a couple of other great players.
All right, here we go.
Free for 90 days, or get 0.9% APR financing for 36 months on a 2023 Honda Ridgeline. Go to AndyMooreHonda.com and get more to your door.
This segment is brought to you by Reynolds Family Dentistry in Sellersburg. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Hey, welcome back. You know what? I just remembered John Boy, our friend Chris Denary, traveling. I think he's on the West Coast, so it's probably going to be too difficult for him today.
That is probably the case. That
is exactly the case. They are on a West Coast swing. I wish I would have remembered that, but that's on me. I saw him at the Pacers game last week, and actually I remember him telling me that. So there's that. Just talking about Indiana, and it's dangerous when you compare teams, compare eras and all that, and I get that. And so you can take this with a grain of salt. But there's no doubt that let's look at the first three years of Tom Crean. The one thing that those teams did night in and night out was compete. And by compete, I mean they scratched, they clawed, they tried. And every year they got better. Every year they got better. They got better. The fact that Tom Crean was able to bring in Jordan Hulls, Derek Elston, Mo Creek, Christian Watford, and Matt Roth in his second year, coming off a 6-25 season, mind-boggling. Mind-boggling. None of those guys were 5-star players, but they turned out to be pretty important, didn't they? Mo Creek, great player, would go on to score 31 points as a freshman against Kentucky. Christian Watford, from the Watt Shot. Jordan Hulls, prolific three-point shooter. Matt Roth, prolific three-point shooter. The next season, they brought in some 3-star from DeMatha, Maryland, named Victor Oladipo. Yeah. 3-star to number 2 pick in the NBA. Juwan Morgan, OG Anunoby. Not 5 stars. As a matter of fact, OG Anunoby was not even listed on the player list when Tom Crean found him at an AAU event. Eyeing talent, recognizing talent, developing talent, getting that talent to work within your system sometimes speaks for itself. Now, Green had his issues, granted. Those teams didn't play a lick of defense, and some other things, but I'm just talking about the fact of talent, not just going to get 5 stars. And that's what I see. Do we see these? There's a whole bunch of guys that developed into great players that I just listed. Jordan Hulls, Mo Creek, Derek Elston, Watford, Matt Roth, Oladipo. Turned out pretty good, huh? It's a lot of development. I personally don't see that kind of development going on in the last 3 years. Everybody's going to jump on the Trace Jackson Davis bandwagon. Okay, I'll give them some credit, but Trace Jackson Davis gets as much credit as anybody because he had the want to. He had the desire. He put in the work to get there. He made the decision to do it. Just food for thought. Don't have to agree. I don't ever claim to be an expert on any subject. That's why I would like to have quote unquote experts as guests as often as possible, because I know they know what they're talking about. People like Todd Leary, Brian Evans, Joe Hellman, whomever it is. These guys, I don't care when they played. They know what the hell they're talking about when it comes to the game of basketball. Todd is just a student of the game. Right up to this moment, he's always watching defenders, watching offensive players, watching shooting, watching different, just virtually everything. Chemistry. And that's why he started his website, myjumpshot.com. He finally, because he was always talking about, it drives him crazy to watch some of these guys shoot. Look at Xavier Johnson, for example. His shot is not set up to be successful. I mean, it's all cocked and over. You know what? I don't know how that starts. I was not a great basketball player, but what I did do when I tried, I was never taught how to shoot, but I just tried to emulate what looked like to be a very, very normal shooting motion. I'm not coming over here and trying to, twist around and cock it up here. Even Gabe Cups, I've seen people mention that when he goes up to shoot, he kind of twists and turns sideways. Zach Edey, 7'4". Those guys have probably the most trouble shooting free throws as anybody when you're that tall. First of all, you're almost, your angle is completely different than most other people. You're damn near looking at the rim. Kidding, it's 10 feet high. But if you raised your hands, you would be even with the rim. But he missed one free throw the other night. One. Indiana's starting guards are not even shooting 50%. Indiana as a team is barely shooting 50%. That's not by accident. It just doesn't happen that way. And it's not about practice. It's about practicing correctly. And that's what I wonder. What's being corrected? What's being changed to make it better? Because practicing the same old ain't working. Because the same old ain't working. Again, just my opinion from someone who absolutely does not consider himself an expert in anything. Let me make that definitely clear. But these are opinions that I get from knowledge I gain talking to people that do damn sure know what they're talking about. I try to learn from these guys. Each and every opportunity I'm around them, that I talk to them, I listen. That doesn't mean I've learned it via experience like they have, but you can still learn things. You can still have an understanding of why it's supposed to be this way, why it needs to be that way. And I'd like to say it's a little surprising, and I think a lot of people wonder why Woody is so far removed from, and I'm not saying Indiana needs to be coached like Bobby Knight coached Indiana. I'm not saying that. But there are certain aspects that he did that are just basics. Hard-ass nose defense, for one thing. I'm pretty sure Indiana was not giving up the three-point shooting under Bob Knight that they give up now. With defenders giving a little it's just, let me give you a little wave as you put that shot up. There's a difference, but Woody was not around Indiana or college basketball for 40 years. It's not working at the college level, in my opinion. But that doesn't mean I know Jack. Like I said, looking for, Joel says the cynicism isn't healthy, and it certainly isn't helping anyone. I'm not sure where did I miss that one, John? A comment prior to that?
I missed what you said. Sorry.
Well, there's a comment that says the cynicism isn't helping anyone, and I'm trying to find a prior comment that would be referring to from Joel. Tannis says Woody needs to play a halftime speech from Bob Knight. I think he just needs to incorporate solid play. He needs to incorporate, again, I go back to those players that played on that second Tom Crean team. They came into a program that was 6-25 the year before. 6-25. There is nothing exciting about that. And they ended up winning 10 games out of 31. But guess what? They scrapped. They played hard. They didn't quit. That's why Assembly Hall was still full of people. They kept playing hard. They played together. I don't see, this team is just an odd collection. And I don't know that I can say that they play all that well together. And I'm not saying it's every one of them. But how do you have a sixth-year senior who did what he did in the Rutgers game? Okay, he deals with all that and turns right around and gets another flagrant foul in the Purdue game. And you want to say that was accidental? Yeah, forearm shiver? I don't think so. So, what does Indiana do? How do they recapture? It's up to Woody to get them in that position, and then it's up to them to make the decision of how they're going to play, how hard they're going to play, how hard they're going to work. I don't know why Trey Galloway is shooting 50% from the free throw line. I really don't. There's no explanation for it. He doesn't have to be Pat Graham, but he's not Shaquille O'Neal either. It is his form off. This is a great question for Todd on Trey specifically, because he's a guy that I know that he works hard. I know that he cares. I know that he wants to win. But whatever it is, he should be an 80% free throw shooter. Not because he is this great shooter, but shooting free throws is just simply not that hard. I've done it. It's not that hard. It just isn't. But it's like Indiana makes a lot of things harder on themselves. I'm not praising Tom Crean. Well, he did get the stamp of approval when he was winning 2 Big Ten titles, but he's also, that's the thing, Five Lefts. He had other things that took away from the positive things he did. You know, he took that team that I'm talking about, you know, within 5 years, they were the number 1 team in the country. But you can't try to change the damn offense the night before you played Syracuse, which is what happened. That was quite possibly a national championship team. But Tom just made some decisions that were not in the best interest of winning, and trying to change the offense the night before that game was not a good one. That's stuff that most of you don't know, but that is true. Bill Evans with a great comment. As an NIL deal, Todd should give free subscription to Fix My Jump Shot to all IU players. You know what? What a great idea. That's actually a great idea, and I'm going to suggest that to him. And I'm getting back to this.
Would that technically be illegal, though? Would that be a form of coaching that they can't receive, even if it was a part of an NIL package?
No, if it's an outside deal, I don't think so. Because in the summertime, now I don't think that they could do it during the season.
Yeah.
It's an out of season type thing. But I was going to go back to what Five Left said. It is ironic that 2 years after winning a Big Ten title, Tom Crean was gone. But people forget he won 2 Big Ten titles in 9 years. Go back and look how many other Big Ten teams have done that in the last whatever. That is not named Purdue. Indiana's not won a Big Ten, come close to winning a Big Ten title since, except last year when, boy, they quite possibly could have won one last year. Some say should have. I'm in that camp. There were a couple of games they lost that they just should not have lost. The lead that they had at Wisconsin, the lead they had at Iowa, boy, both of those games cost them a share of a Big Ten title. And that's tough because they're hard to win. And Sean points out, Crean did have some. That's the enigma. That is the funny thing, Sean. Of all these, he had more hits than misses, but his misses were really bad and amazingly bad. Tim Priller comes to mind. Great guy, but he was like the 880th ranked player in that season, which it only goes to like 300, I think. But And then Grant Gillon, who made all the stink when Indiana didn't want to keep him, and he took to social media to let it be known, which that was a little odd. But yeah, he had a couple of misses, and if you were a baseball player and you're a prolific hitter, he struck out on some pitches that were like 8 feet outside, basically, on a couple of those guys. No doubt, Sean. But the good was better than he had a lot more hits than misses. You know, he landed Cody Zeller, Oladipo, Christian Watford, Jordan Hulls, Mo Creek, Derek Elston, Blackman Jr., gee whiz. He had just Will Sheehy. Just good players that they won with, that they were competitive with, that wanted to win, more importantly. Now, that brings to mind, I'm wondering if these 5 stars, which other programs are able to get them to play well, but is the mentality of the 5-star so elite today that it's almost not impossible, but difficult to have a team full of guys that are just fixated on winning? Nobody's playing for that across their chest. I can tell you that right now. Whatever that name on their chest is, they don't grow up. Most of these guys not growing up with that. Well, first of all, Indiana has not been Indiana, so there's that. But they're not from here. Most of them are not from around here, and they didn't grow up hearing it. Someone is going to have to make Indiana a college basketball program again. Let me say that again, a college basketball program. That's just my unauthorized and humble opinion. Tana says that Crean developed D. Wade, Oladipo, and Anthony Edwards. He's got a lot of good stuff on his resume. I mean, and 5 Left pointing out that says Robbie Hummel was hurt some. You know what, though? I don't care. They were not. Indiana had 2 guys when Crean got here. 2 that were bench warmers. And this was not in the era of the portal. There was no portal. So that was remarkable. And it's just, if you, and everybody can have whatever their opinion they want, and that's fine. I'm not going to jump on anybody for having their opinions. Everybody is welcome to have that. And people see things differently. But sometimes I think people want to see things differently than what they really are. And I don't know what the argument could possibly be that Indiana has been anything but disappointing. That the fact that they are so guard poor is anything but disappointing. And why it is disappointing. Why are they guard poor? I mean, get to the root of the question. That's the problem. The true root question doesn't get answered. I mean, it goes to Woody out and out refusing to talk about his rotation philosophy just because he's been questioned about it. Well, that's it. You're questioned about it because there's never an answer. It's a generic blanket answer. You know, and that these guys can't play 40 minutes answer. No, not accurate. Go look at box scores from around the country. the stars play. He did it. He played 45 minutes. I've said this before. He played 45 minutes in an overtime game in 1980 against Ohio State, 6 games back from being off the injured list from his back injury. But these guys who are in as good a shape as they could possibly be in, that have training like nobody else has, that has the nutritional tables laid out like nobody ever possibly has. Hell, back then, those guys were eating cheeseburgers and whatever the hell they wanted to eat. They didn't have strength coaches. Oh, go run the stairs. Do some gassers. That was it. But those guys were playing 40 minutes. But now all of a sudden, with the best in healthcare, the best in training, they can't. Don't understand that one either. We've got to take a break. Appreciate you being here with us on Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Back with more right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
In the market. John, boy, do you have any sound?
I did yesterday, and of course now you want it. I should have thought about it earlier. It's my fault.
But
damn it,
it's
not your fault. I wish I had it pulled up already.
Do you not still have that same sound?
No, I don't do it the way that I used to, where I
cut and keep.
Well, I didn't cut it. I played directly off of YouTube. Give me a moment.
Give me a moment. Man, I hate going on rants.
I'm removing myself for a second.
Remove yourself.
What? Did we not do the sound already? Mike Woodson and Trey Galloway? Why do I feel like we did it already?
I don't think so.
I guess it's because I had it pulled up yesterday and I thought we played it. Maybe we didn't.
No, we were going to, and then we got through the segment without it by accident.
All right, I've got one of the Woody ones we can use. Just about the game. Just about the game. And this will be a short 5 or 6 minute segment as well. All right, here we go.
Chop Shop Market and Table has the largest selection of in-house made products around and everything you need to make a gourmet meal at home. Or pick out a tomahawk steak or a grouper filet and enjoy it cooked to perfection in Chop Shop Steakhouse. Chop Shop Market and Table, a part of the Wild Food Group, is your butcher, baker, and fish house, no matter where you live.
This segment is brought to you by the Ugly Grouper. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio here on this Thursday. Appreciate you. Coaches get a little prickly when they get beat. and I'm not saying this is right or wrong, Rodney Terry, Texas basketball's head coach, calls UCF's players classless for their horns down celebration moments after a discouraging 77-71 home loss to UCF on Wednesday night. Texas men's basketball coach Rodney Terry took offense at how some of the Knights were celebrating. A handful of UCF players mocked Texas's iconic hook 'em horns sign with the horns down, or is it that way? I don't remember, but horns down gesture. While going through the post-game handshake line, Terry repeatedly shouted at those other players, "That's classless." And told them, "Don't do that stuff." But he didn't say stuff. He was still fuming 30 minutes later when he addressed the incident in his post-game press conference, saying when you do those kind of things, it's classless. But let's hear it from the man himself.
I'm a big believer in, you win the right way, you lose the right way. And, I always tell my guys, whether you win or lose, you win the right way. You lose the right way, you carry yourself the right way. You don't go through the handshake line or prior to getting to the handshake line and have about 6 or 7 guys putting the horns down. We don't do that, because when you do those kind of things, it looks very classless, and it also looks like you were just hoping to win. We never go into games trying to hope to win. We go into games expecting to win. So we don't act like that. We expect to win. We don't jump up and down like we won a national championship. We sure don't step on anyone's home court deal and act crazy and try to show them up in any way. We don't do that. So that's what I was angry about. And I was letting those guys know you don't do that. You guys won. Hey, we shake your hand, tip our hat to you, but we're not going to let you act that way in our building. You're not going to do that. You're not going to put your horns down and do all that nonsense.
That's Terry, Rodney Terry. The other night also, I think this was the game in which Illinois got upset by Maryland. I forget the player's name, but as they're going through the handshake line, I noticed that one of the Illinois coaches, I believe, I think it was this game. I hope I have it right, but just kind of as he shook, they don't really shake. They just grab, make contact. Oof. He gave a flyby on Maryland's top player, and that player turned around and shouted something at him. And then next thing you know, they're going at it. And this was an assistant coach. So I agree with what Rodney Terry just said. But what that assistant coach did, I'd like to look in to see if there was any more. That stuff they probably keep in house. But little surprising to see that from a losing assistant coach. Very curious. Mike Woodson, on the other hand, heading into a game this Friday night, but coming off of a loss to rival Purdue, in which Indiana just could not get the things done. And we'll talk about Zach Edey here in a minute. All these people that think that he was camped out in the paint, not the case. But let's hear what Mike Woodson had to say.
Well, we got smacked the first half, and you got to give them credit. I thought they were more tougher. Yeah, there were a lot of fouls called, against us, but they set the tone. I thought we came out with good intentions. Back and forth, they're 8, 9, 10 points, and then we couldn't make shots. That was a big difference in the first half. And they made shots, and they got to the free throw line. And Edey had a lot to do with that.
Yes, he did. And camping out in the paint was not it. I watched the thing with Ant Wright yesterday on Twitter, and he went through the entire game, and there was only 2 times that he considered it a gray area as far as being in the paint. And I watched it the whole time, and he was right. I think people don't understand when a shot goes up, that resets. If he's standing with 1 foot in, 1 foot out, and lifts that foot for just barely, that resets. So it just wasn't so that he was doing all that. But John Boy, who's on the show tomorrow?
Tomorrow we should get a visit from our friend Bob Kravitz from
Can't wait.
bobkravitz.com. We should hear from Zach Osterman of the Indy Star. And then everything else is up in the air. We won't hear from Casey Bartley tomorrow because we heard from him on Tuesday. So we'll see what else we can get.
I might see about getting Todd Leary in here to
That's
preview
right, the king of myjumpshot.com.
Yeah, the Todd father. I have to see about getting Todd on to preview that game. But looking forward to it as always. As grateful to have you guys along for the ride today. As greatly appreciated. And a big thanks to all of our guests as always. Shannon Griffith from Hoosier Tailgate. Grateful to him. Tyler Smith from thehoosier.com. And next week, we'll be back with Chris Denary as he is on that West Coast swing and for the Pacers. And can't wait to talk about this big trade that they made because then he'll be unhandcuffed anyway, which it will be official by then. But looking forward to seeing how this affects the Pacers going forward and how much better they can become once they get Tyrese Halliburton back. Now you're going to have to reintegrate Tyrese into the lineup with a player of this magnitude, and we'll see how well that they can get that done. But it's going to wrap it up for us today. So thankful, like we said, appreciate you. It's an honor to be here and a privilege. Couldn't do it without each and every one of you. Thanks to John, the producer, as well, for keeping us between the white lines. And until tomorrow, I am Jim Coyle. I will see you on the radio.
Thanks for listening to Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube page for more clips and team coverage of Indiana basketball, football, and more. You can also find full episodes and tons of other content on thehoosier.com. We'll see you next time for another edition of Indiana Sports Beat Radio.